Hi guys, Dr. Rob Barrington here with some more nutrition advice. I wanted to talk today about whey protein. Whey protein is quite a common dietary supplement, and of all the questions I get asked, one of the most common is should I take whey protein? What type of whey protein should I take? Where do I buy it from? So I thought I'd put together a short video to explain the basics of how to pick a whey protein, because it can be a bit of a minefield to those people who haven't looked into the different types of whey protein and perhaps don't really know what sort of whey protein they require for their own needs. In its very basic form, there are two types of whey protein supplement on the market. You can buy a whey protein concentrate and you can buy a whey protein isolate. And the difference, there are differences between these, and they're reflected in the price. Now, what is whey protein? Whey protein is one of the protein fractions of milk. Milk has two protein fractions. One of them is casein, and one of them is whey. During the manufacture of cheese, the whey protein is removed. It's considered a it's considered a waste product. So it's there is a curdling process, and the whey protein during that manufacturing step is able to be removed. Now, historically, it was thrown away. It was considered a waste product. It had no useful purpose. But more recently, thanks to things like freeze drying technology, it can be freeze dried and turned into a powder, and that powder can be used to create either a food supplement or a food additive. Whey protein is used quite widely in the food manufacturing industry as an additive, and it's added to various foods to change the consistency and also to add protein to those foods if they are particularly low in protein. So that's the first thing to say. Whey protein is not just a dietary supplement; it's also a very important food additive that's used in the food industry. Now, when the whey protein is removed from the cheese and it is freeze dried, it's kind of in its raw state, and in this state it's referred to as a whey protein concentrate. And the reason it's a concentrate is because it has many other things included in it along with it. So it's not just a protein. There are also phospholipids in there. There are lipids. There's conjugated linoleic acid. There is also lactose, which is the main sugar in milk, and all of these other components create a very homogeneous mix. Yes, it does have a lot of protein, but there are other things as well, and so it's referred to as a whey protein concentrate. Now, some of the proteins in whey protein are quite interesting. There are three that have been researched quite extensively, but there are many. There's alpha-lactalbumin, there's beta-lactoglobulin, and there's also lactoferrin. They're the three main proteins that have been isolated and investigated in whey protein, and they're in very high concentrations in a whey protein concentrate. They appear to be absorbed in humans, and they appear to have certain immune stimulating effects. It's assumed that they have these effects in baby cows, which would be consuming the milk, and they appear to there is some kind of there is a species crossover, and they also have this stimulating effect in humans. So that provides some of the health properties of this whey protein concentrate. And if you eat a freeze-dried whey protein concentrate, which has a protein content of about anywhere between probably about 60 to 80%, depending on the quality of the product, some of the very low concentrates can have much lower protein concentrates, but generally if you buy a commercial whey protein concentrate, it will tell you what the protein content is, and it's usually about between 70 and 80%. Most of the ones I've seen claim 80%. I would suggest they're probably a little bit lower than that, but the claim is about 80%. They're a good source of protein, and they do contain lactose. They do contain these phospholipids, these lipids, these other things, but they do have quite high concentrations of these three proteins, and there are others as well. Those are the three most common that have been researched. There are other peptides and proteins within whey protein concentrate that have these immune stimulating effects. So when you buy a whey protein concentrate, that is effectively what you're buying. They skim the whey protein off the top of the rest of the milk during the cheese manufacture process. There is a very slight amount of processing, but it's effectively freeze dried and sold as a protein powder. And it's a very homogeneous mix of different things, but it does contain these immune stimulating proteins, and it has a very high concentration of protein as well as a high concentration of branched chain amino acids, which means that it has very good skeletal muscle building properties. So that's a whey protein concentrate. Now, there are manufacturing steps that you can then go and do to a whey protein concentrate to turn it into a whey protein isolate. And what you're effectively doing is you're trying to get rid of all of the things that are not protein. So you want to get rid of the lactose, you want to get rid of the phospholipids, you want to get rid of the lipids, the conjugated linoleic acid, all of these other things that are in a whey protein concentrate you want to get rid of to produce an isolate. And there are two main manufacturing processes that a whey protein that would concentrate would go through in order to be able to produce a whey protein isolate. And those two processes are ion exchange and microfiltration. Microfiltration is just a very clever scientific filtering device that is able to filter out certain particles, and ion exchange is a clever system that uses charges to be able to be able to filter out the products that you require. The end product of these two processes is that you are able to get rid of much of the lactose, most of the phospholipids. You're able to get rid of most of the lipids. You're also able to get rid of some of the other things you don't want, like conjugated linoleic acid. What you end up with is a more concentrated protein that is purer. It has less of the other ingredients in it. So the protein content of a protein isolate will go up to about 90%. That's usually about the claimed protein content of an isolate. So you're getting rid of some of the other things, which then increases the relative protein content. That's good, and if you, for example, are lactose intolerant and you don't want to consume lactose, consuming a whey protein isolate would be much more beneficial because there's much lower concentrations of lactose in a whey protein isolate. The disadvantage is that these two processes, ion exchange and microfiltration, can denature proteins. And what we find is that the concentration of some of these immune stimulating proteins like alpha-lactalbumin, beta-lactoglobulin and lactoferrin tends to be much lower in a whey protein isolate, and that's because the proteins have been denatured. So they're either broken down or their shape is changed, and therefore they don't have this biological activity that they have in the whey protein concentrate. So you have a higher protein content in a whey protein isolate, but you're lacking some of the immune stimulating proteins, but also you get less of the other ingredients, and therefore the actual protein in a whey protein isolate tends to be much more quickly absorbed compared to a whey protein concentrate. So you can see there's swings and roundabouts here about which type of product you actually want. And of course, because microfiltration and ion exchange are expensive processes, the cost of whey protein isolate goes up, and it will cost you much more to be able to buy a high quality whey protein isolate. Now, there is another step that can be done to a whey protein isolate after it has been through ion exchange or microfiltration or both, and that is to digest some of the proteins in a pre-digestion step using enzymes. Some of the proteins, obviously, in the whey protein isolate will be quite big. If you add protein digesting enzymes, what happens is you break them down into smaller peptides. And this produces a hydrolysate, and this is effectively a mixture of longer proteins with shorter peptides, maybe tri and dipeptides as well. Now, the advantage of that is that there is less requirement for enzymes in your digestive system, therefore, to digest these proteins in order to be able to get them into a state where they can be absorbed in the small intestine. So if you buy a high quality whey protein isolate that's been through microfiltration, ion exchange, and is also a hydrolysate because it's been broken down by enzymes, what you're effectively buying is a product that is contains high amounts of di and tripeptides and smaller peptides, fewer proteins, it's much purer, and the absorption rate of the amino acids in that product will be very quick. So a very high quality whey protein isolate is a very different product to a very normal whey protein concentrate. So which is better? Well, I would have to say there's not really an answer to that. The product that you will buy will depend on what you really want from a whey protein. If you are an elite athlete and you've been training, perhaps after you've been training you would want the amino acids to get into your bloodstream as quickly as possible. Now this would be the same for anybody, not just elite athlete, but elite athletes tend to have free supplements. They don't tend to pay for them because they tend to be sponsored by companies, or they have large amounts of money to be able to spend on supplements. If money's no object and you want to get that, you want to get everything you can out of a supplement, then the best whey protein to take after a workout, if you take it with water in isolation and you want to get the amino acids into your system as quickly as possible, the best whey protein to take would be one that has been pre-digested and been through ion exchange and microfiltration, and therefore was a very high quality whey protein isolate. Solgar do, and I just want to emphasize, I don't have any affiliation with any supplement companies, but Solgar do a product called Whey to Go, which has been through those processes. And if you want to have a look at what a high quality whey protein is, I'm not suggesting you buy it, I'm just saying if you want to have a look, you can go online and look at the manufacturer's information they give you about Whey to Go, which is the Solgar whey protein. If you have a look at that, that is a very high quality whey protein for you to be able to judge others by. I think it's ion exchanged, microfiltered, and then it's hydrolyzed as well. So it's got those 3 steps that produce these very short chain di and tripeptides and short polypeptides, which are very quickly absorbed, and that would be something to compare other whey proteins to. Another reason you might want to take a very high quality whey protein isolate is if you have digestive problems. Perhaps you've had a medical condition which means that you find it difficult to digest protein. Perhaps you have a certain condition whereby you require a very rapid absorption of protein, or you have an absence of particular digestive enzymes, particularly protein digesting enzymes. A very high quality whey protein isolate may actually have benefits in terms of the fact that you can get the protein into your system. So there are 2 reasons why you might want to take a whey protein isolate. It's really for speed absorption and ease of absorption. That's what you need to think about high quality whey protein isolate. Yes, it does have a little bit extra protein, but theoretically you could just take a little bit more of the whey protein concentrate and you would have the same amount of protein. So really, the emphasis for whey protein isolate, when it's been through these manufacturing steps, is if you want speed of absorption. If you want to take advantage of the immune stimulating effects of whey protein, you have to take the whey protein concentrate, and that's because the proteins that stimulate the immune system are not really present in the whey protein isolate to the same extent as they are in the whey protein concentrate, because they've been through these steps and they've been denatured. So to be able to take advantage of that immune stimulating effect, you have to really take a whey protein concentrate. So there are 2 situations where you might have to pick one or the other. If you were just after a general protein supplement, you also might want to take into account the cost. If, for example, you felt that you weren't getting enough protein in your diet and you thought, okay, well, I should take a protein supplement, I'll buy a whey protein supplement. Ion exchange whey proteins, microfiltered whey proteins, hydrolyzed whey proteins are very expensive. For just adding protein to your diet, it would probably be more cost effective to go to a whey protein concentrate. They tend to be at least half as cheap as the more expensive isolates. You can on eBay buy an 80% whey protein concentrate for about £10 a kilo, 10 English pounds a kilo, which is fairly cheap. You would pay at least double that for a low quality isolate, and you may even pay triple or quadruple that for a higher quality isolate. I know that the Solgar would be at least more than 4 times as expensive as that, probably getting on for 8 times as expensive as that. So it really depends what you want. If you're just after the protein, then the concentrate is possibly one of the ones to go for. There are other proteins that you can get freeze dried, but they tend not to be as cheap as whey, and the reason for that, I think, is that whey is just there's a lot of it about as a waste product from cheese manufacturers, so as it's become more popular, the price of it has dropped. You have to obviously, if you want to produce freeze-dried egg protein, you'd have to use the eggs. They're not a waste product, and therefore you're buying a food product that has other uses, and therefore the cost is much higher. So looking around, if you look at the other proteins, whey protein is actually one of the cheapest proteins you can buy as a supplement as well. If you do look at other proteins, they're not really of the same kind of cost to benefit ratio. So really, that's a bit of an overview in terms of which you could go for. There are blends of proteins that use a whey protein concentrate base and add a small amount of isolate as well. You have to be very careful because it often doesn't tell you how much isolate has been added to the product from the ingredients. You'd have to work that out based on the content of the protein. The reason that the protein isolate is often added is to increase the protein content. So instead of, for example, getting 80% protein, if you take a concentrate and you add a small amount of isolate, you might be able to put the protein content up to 85 if you do a 50-50 mix. So that's a reason why they sometimes blend the two together. But there's often no indication in these blends what processes the isolate has been through, and therefore you don't really know the quality of that as well. So really you have to do your research and you have to look at the labels, but it is very simple. If you want a general protein supplement and you want the immune boosting effects of whey, you must take a protein, you need to take a protein concentrate. If you want a very rapidly absorbable form of protein which is higher in protein, and money is really no object, then look at a whey protein isolate. If you want something that's in between the two and you want some of the immune stimulating effects, but you also want a higher protein content and perhaps something that's slightly more absorbable, then go for a blend of the two. So that would be a whey protein concentrate with added isolate. But you do have to be very careful. You have to read the labels. I'm not saying there are people out there deliberately trying to rip you off, but there are a lot of different ways of describing these products. There are good manufacturers and there are bad manufacturers, and there are people that will accurately describe their product, and there will be those people that miss bits of information off. So do your own research, and it's not to say that cheap products are bad. I've found some very cheap whey protein concentrates on eBay that I think are actually quite good, and I've actually found some quite expensive products in shops that I think are actually quite bad. So the cost is not a reflection always of how good the product is. Generally you won't be able to get a high quality isolate very cheaply, but you can buy a cheap whey protein concentrate which is actually quite expensive, just cleverly labelled to make it look of a better product than it is. The trick with whey protein is to educate yourself. I've got a couple of articles about whey protein on my blog that you could read. There are many other articles about whey protein on the internet, and I would suggest that you do your research to find the product that suits you best. Like I say, there's not really a good and a bad product when it comes to whey protein. What you're really looking for is making sure you're getting good value for money in what you're buying, so that you're not paying for something you're not getting, and also that you're actually satisfying what you want from a whey protein. If, for example, you're going to mix your protein with something else, there's no real point getting an isolate, because mixing the protein with something else will slow the absorption, and therefore you won't receive any of the benefits of the very quick absorption rates of that whey protein. So if you put your whey protein in milk, you might as well get a concentrate, because the isolate will only be digested as quickly as the slowest digesting protein, which in this case is the milk, which will sit in your stomach for a large number of minutes, and therefore you're really getting no benefit from the whey protein isolate. So if you're going to take a high protein, a high quality isolate product, take it with water, with nothing else, on an empty stomach, and that way it will go straight into your bloodstream. If you start taking it while you've got food in your stomach, or you take it with other things, what you're going to find is that you're not going to get the benefits that you really want from that product. So I hope that was interesting. That's just a little overview of whether you should buy a whey protein concentrate or a whey protein isolate. As always, buyer beware. Make sure you read the labels carefully, make sure you look at the amino acid profiles, make sure that there aren't other ingredients added to water down the whey proteins, such as soy protein or other cheaper proteins. If you want a whey protein, make sure that the ingredients are just whey protein. I hope that was interesting. If you've got any comments on this video, please leave them in the comments box below, and as always, I will get back to you, and I will see you next week for another video, and in the meantime, take care.